We all have the capability from birth to be emotionally intelligent beings. And here's the challenge. In some families that you grow up in, it's okay to express your emotions. In other families, it's not. We have very clear binary gender norms, which say that women are more emotional and men are not. It's not okay for men to cry or express emotions that are more sensitive, but you can be aggressive and angry. But it's not okay for me to do that, and I'm expected to be more emotional or to cry or something like that. So our family systems, the social systems that we live in, the cultures that we grow up in dictate that.
Catie, welcome to the Who You Know Show. Good morning.
Good morning, Trevor. It's great to see you. Great to hang out with you and everyone else who's listening.
Absolutely. All right. So one of the things I wanted to dive into right off the bat, okay, because this is something I feel like certain people struggle with, is this emotional intelligence thing. But let's go to the basics of the emotional intelligence for just a second. Can you define, what's your definition of emotional intelligence? And then why is it so essential for, executives and leaders to really cultivate and harness this skill?
It's a great question. And I talk about emotional intelligence. It's in my bio and it's on my website, but I usually don't use those words because I find that people get wigged out if they feel like I'm not emotionally intelligent. Because if you Google emotional intelligence and what it is, or if you Google what is the most important business skill or professional skill or leadership skill to have, it has something to do with emotional intelligence. It's not financial acumen. It's not technical skills. It's your emotional intelligence. So the way I categorize it is it's really having an understanding of your emotional state with precision at any one given time, and then being able to interpret the emotional context or read the data, read the room, the emotional room that you're in, right? And then being able to do something with that. So it's being able to do all of that in real time, which is a skill because those are three really big chunks of things to do all at once.
Wow. It's reading the room, right? It's reading the room. So I'm going to give you a mic drop for that one real quick. So mic drop for that, reading the room. And I think people are not that great at that sometimes. Like, I don't know what it is about it, but I feel like people aren't that good about it. I personally, I don't know if I just developed the skill or it was a natural thing for me or what, but coming from the auto industry, I had to, really read people. And so I'm fairly good at poker as well. I can really, and then podcasting and being on your feet. I do live shows all the time. And so always being in a place where I've got to be listening, active listening and responding. And, I don't know, but I feel like not everybody always has that emotional intelligence. Talk to me about that.
So let me just start by saying everybody can have it because we are emotional beings first before we're thinking beings. So there are mountains of evidence that prove this. So before you make a decision, before you decide what you're going to say, before you even have a thought in your brain, your body actually is interpreting all of the stuff that's happening, all your five senses and a sixth sense if you're lucky to have one of those. And then it sends it from one part of your brain, which processes the emotional stuff, to the other part of your brain, which processes decision-making and really gives you thought and language. And then you actually go do something. So we all have the capability from birth to be emotionally intelligent beings. Here's the challenge. In some families that you grow up in, it's okay to express your emotions. In other families, it's not. In just the United States alone, but this also spreads out to different parts of the world, we have very clear binary gender norms, which say that women are more emotional and men are not. It's not okay for men to cry or express emotions that are more sensitive, but you can be aggressive and angry. But it's not okay for me to do that, and I'm expected to be more emotional or to cry or something like that. So our family systems, the social systems that we live in, the cultures that we grow up in dictate that. And then we are asked to, if we go to a traditional school, we're asked to regulate our emotions one way that's befitting to a classroom. So as we're developing from, little tykes all the way up through high school, we're being told to behave in a particular emotional way, right, that befits learning in a classroom. And then we go into the professional world. And depending on what industry you're in, there's a whole different context of how emotions are allowed or honored to show up in that context. So we're kind of given all of these different clues and signals. And some of us over time make choices about how we want to show up regardless of what the context is. And so you've probably done this too, when you recognize why understanding the emotional context of a room is so important. But if you're not taught that sometimes, or you're not exposed to it, or if what your natural emotional state would be is suppressed by the culture or systems that you're raised in, yeah, you get people who are all over the map when they enter the professional world, which is really where I come in to help kind of unwind that and give people different tools and strategies to be able to build the life and the career that they want, but really understanding that from the emotional space.
Yeah, and it reminds me of, I mean, what you're saying. Like you said, in different spaces, the way we interact, like in the professional world versus your personal world, stuff like that. Like it reminds me of a meeting that I had where I actually kind of like could have probably used a little bit self-control. Okay. I had a meeting with some high ups. Okay. And it was pretty important. And honestly, oh, I got a phone call here. Honestly, during the conversation with some of these folks, um, it was like I took it real personal. Okay. And I got real emotional. Okay. And was kind of like clapping back a little bit. Okay. And sometimes I go, man, my big mouth, it gets me in trouble sometimes, you know? And I look back and I'm like, man, I could have handled that a little bit differently.
Can
I
we
could have
play with
handled that
this?
situation
Can we
differently.
play with this for just a
Yeah.
second? Because I think it would be
Yeah.
really
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
helpful for people to understand why this is such an important thing. And even in retrospect, understanding it. So what happened, or what was the feeling or the emotion that like kind of got at you, that went from you being really smart and competent and kind of sharing what you wanted to it going a little sideways?
A little sideways. So I felt like I was being robbed. Okay. I felt like I was being robbed. That's the way it felt to me. Very disrespectful to me in the scenario. And really all along, it wasn't that at all. Okay. It wasn't that at all. There's just processes and things that have to be done. And in my mind, it just felt like I was being persecuted in a way, right? That's the way it felt like. And I'm like, no, heck no. And I started clapping back, and I wanted it to be known that, like, you're not going to step on me like that. And I did. And the stupid thing about it is I go home and I'm like, man, I not only embarrassed me, but I embarrassed some other leaders that were there supporting me. And I'm like, man, I embarrassed myself, and I embarrassed like the people there that was like, no, Trevor's awesome. He's the man. Right. And so I'm like, dang, okay, I could have handled that a little bit differently. And but you live and you learn and all that stuff, and everything's good now. But anyways, it was an interesting learning
So
experience, right?
here's where people learn. So this is what this is like the coaching work that I do with people. So what I would be doing with you is taking you back there, because you are going to be in a meeting or a situation where you're supposed to be Trevor Houston, and you're, Mr. Wonderful, Mr. Successful, Mr. Powerful, Mr. Whatever it is that you're putting out there, right? The vibe that you're trying to create in your life. Somebody is going to come in and they're going to cut you off at the knees. And it's going to be when you're not expecting it. You're going to feel disrespected, disempowered, like someone's taking advantage of you, someone's robbing your bread, whatever the thing is. It's going to happen again. So the strategy is, you have to play with, when I get into a space where I feel disrespected, you have to, in the moment, be able to take care of yourself, to honor the emotional state that you're in. But then you still have to be in the meeting. You're not just going to walk up and walk out of the room. You still have to be there, but you can't be then speaking and making decisions and presenting yourself from a place of being disrespected, because in your scenarios, the way you describe it, you fight. So I'm going to clap back. I'm going
Mm.
to fight you. Well,
Oh yeah.
that's
Yep.
just it's just not the best negotiation tactic, right? Is fighting
No, it's
somebody.
not. It's horrible. It's the worst. Like I was like, you're absolutely right. Like in my natural state, just the way I was brought up and raised and grew up and everything, I'm a fighter. at nature. Like I'm a fighter by nature, especially when I feel like my back's against the wall. I'm like, I'm going to fight my way out. But what you're saying is not the best negotiation tactic or strategy. And I could have handled the situation a lot better. And I did make sure I did two things. Okay. Number one, I caught myself in the middle of it. Okay. And I said, please don't excuse my I don't know the exact words I used, but I was basically telling them I'm extremely passionate. Okay, please don't excuse my passion for like anger, right? Like I can't remember the exact words I used, but I tried to temper myself, and I did. And then the second thing I did was I came back after I went home and had that realization of like, man, you didn't handle that the best way. I came back and I apologized. I said, hey, you know what, guys? Again, I got extremely passionate in there. Here's why, but it doesn't excuse the way
And
the way
that's
it came out.
the
So
best
anyway,
way to have handled that. And the reason why in hindsight you're able to sit there and go, oh man, I should have handled that differently. I would have said something differently, is because you're not in an emotional state anymore. You're back in the rational part of your brain, right? So of course you can think clearly. Of course you can think of the 10 different things that you could have said or done in that moment. And so a lot of the work that I do is to try and teach professionals, leaders or otherwise. So how do you in that moment get yourself back into that homeostasis place, or even prepare going into that meeting that something, if what happens if, like, and not worst case scenario, but what happens if somebody says this, or you go in and ask for a raise and someone goes, no, there's not really the budget for it, but you know that they're going to hire for somebody else and they're going to pay them more than what you're getting paid. It's like, was there a budget for it or not? People are going to start to feel a certain way about that. And that is not going to bring out the best you. And so it's really about getting people to understand their emotions, to be able to plan for some of these things, to actually do training for it. Like this is in my mind, it's not a mental act. It's a physical act too. Like how do you train for keeping in an emotional state as much as humanly possible, being emotionally healthy, so that when you get into those situations that you're game ready. This is a Super Bowl moment. This isn't when you're going to choke. This is when you're going to be the MVP. Like, how do you be there, even if you know that then in the back of your mind, they're like, well, I'm feeling a little bit this way, but this is how Trevor's going to show up. Like, that's the work that I do. And if you can learn to do that and do it in the moment and do it with consistency, you can be in any room and almost weather any kind of crazy situation because you've been practicing and preparing for it.
that's amazing because I definitely needed you on that day. You know what I'm saying? I needed you there, like, so I could temper myself. But no, I did. I think another one of my like superpowers is actually accountability. And so the fact that I think what gave me some points back on the board was when I went back and humbled myself and said, hey, you know what, guys, like, look, I apologize. That was unacceptable. And anyways, and I went back and just humbled myself. And I think that's super important. And I didn't do it for anybody, just because I meant it. You know what I mean? I just did it because I meant it. And shouldn't have been acting like that, acting like a fool. But anyway, um sometimes guys, sometimes it's the way it is. All right. So next question I have for you is about building relationships, okay? Because this is the Who You Know show, right? We're all about cultivating strong relationships. How can we use emotional intelligence to empower leaders to create deeper connections with their team members and their colleagues?
Oof, that's a big question. You're coming out heavy hitting from the get go. Um, this is one where, as a leader, you really have to be committed to wanting to know the other people. So I look at leadership and business as a very human experience. I'm all about making money. I'm all about changing the world, innovating, entrepreneurship, all those kinds of things. Love it. But this is a really human experience. And so if you're in a leadership role, my philosophy would be it's your responsibility to know these people, know what motivates them, know what drives them. You don't have to know what they ate for dinner, but you should understand what's most important to them. Is it their family? Is it their community? Is it growing in their role? What is it that they want? And be personally invested in finding pathways for their success. If you're able to do that, your team will be a high performing team. If you're able to do that, you're going to have people on your team who are the ones that say, I want to get promoted or I want to grow. They're going to be doing that. If you're able to do that, it doesn't matter if you end up having turnover on your team, because you're going to be able to bring in some new humans and your reputation is going to be that, hey, if you're on Trevor's team, man, he loves his people and he cares about them and he grows them, and they go out to another team or another part of the business or another company, and your reputation is Trevor can grow people, he cares about them, he loves them, he takes care of them. You are bulletproof when you do things like that. Like, so the relationship to me is more important than the business stuff. If you've got the strong relationship, the business stuff takes care of itself. When you don't have that, when your numbers start to slip, when your team is not performing where it needs to, it's because your relationship is off. It's not because they're not working hard. It's not because they don't care. It's not because they're not taking care of your customers. It's because your relationship with them is off.
That's good. No, that's really good. Because I'm thinking of another scenario right now, where business has been a little bit off, right? And I'm thinking of some individuals who are not performing at their peak, which I know because we've worked together for many years. So I know what they're capable of. And so, and then what you just said, I'm thinking about, I'm like, you know what? The relationship is off right now. The relationship's off. And so I need to take the time, sounds like, to communicate better and to find out what's going on behind the scenes, because there's got to be something going on. It's like things aren't clicking. So what's going on behind the scenes that's causing this decline,
Right.
right? And so
Right. And doing that from a place of curiosity, humility,
mm,
really wanting to know, not because you're like, I want your performance to get to where it needs to be. It's because you care about the human being on the other side of it. So when you go in there with that only in mind, in a kind of a servant's heart in that way, you'll find out what you need to know. You'll be able to kind of get under the hood a little bit. And you're a smart guy. You'll give them resources, you'll give them support, you'll get them whatever they need to be successful. But it has to come from that place of genuine care and concern about the people. And like you said, the relationship.
yeah, because they know, right? They know, because you just know when you're not performing at your best. Okay, we all know it, and it's one of those deals where you got to ask yourself, hey, today would you give yourself a raise or would you fire yourself? Like what? Like literally rate yourself. What would you do? And there's some days where I'll be honest with you. Some days I'd fire myself. And then some days I'm like, yeah, let me get that trophy. Let me get the raise, all of that stuff. You know when you're performing at your peak. And so, um, with this person, they know what's going on. And so it's I don't really have to dig into that too much because they already know it. You know what I mean? I just need to lift up the hood and figure out, hey, what do we need to do about this? We need to get an oil change going on in here. You know what I'm saying? What do we need to do to fix the car because it's not running right now.
It's right. And look, this is no different. I do this with clients of mine too. When I feel if the vibes are off, what's going on? And is it our relationship or is it because they're distracted? Is it because it's something else? So in that whole vein of who you know, when you haven't heard from somebody in a while, vibes might be off. Reconnect, figure out what's going on. But it's out of genuine care and concern for the people, for the humans. And like I said, the rest of the business stuff takes care of itself from there. You'll know what to do. You'll know what to do.
Yeah, definitely. I saw with this individual I saw the other day in the meeting a little bit of an emotional kind of a little bit of a breakdown, and it came from a great spot, but it was kind of like, oh wow, it had me a little concerned. So there's probably something going on behind the scenes that I'm not aware of. We all got stuff, guys. We all got stuff. We all got our own mess, our life. Your families, kids, spouse, all kinds of stuff, in-laws. We just came through the holidays, which, all of that could drive somebody nuts. So you never know what's going on behind the scenes. And so to your point in this conversation, I just need to reach out and figure out what's going on and figure out if I can help and if I can be a resource and solve some of those issues. And what you're saying is that alone will help to bring them in some of their performance and things back up.
100%. 100%. And I've fortunately worked for a number of leaders who've done this for me over the years. I mean, I went through a traumatic divorce. I've moved a lot. I had, and just the regular, normal, growing up professional challenges that you do have. So having somebody who I felt like had my back that meant the world to me. And I mean, I did double down on work and performing because I knew that they had my back. If someone's got your six, you're good. But when you feel like you're all alone or nobody understands or nobody even cares to reach out, yeah, that makes the performance issues and everything else, it's exponentially worse. So yeah, I love it. I hope you do reach out and do that because it's the kindest thing that you could do. But again, my philosophy is that's your role as the leader.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense. I mean, if you think about it, you got somebody who's not performing well, something's going on behind the scenes because you know what they're capable of. And if you just go in the situation and start beating on them, like, yo, what's going down? Which is actually my natural. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm kind of like a hard coach like that. I'm like, because I'm like a no excuse kind of whatever. But that's not always the right approach because you're just beating them while they're down. They know again, inside you're not performing well. So it's like in sports. Okay. The Cowboys, right? Just over the weekend, man, the Cowboys just stunk it up. And they knew they were stinking it up. Okay. No one had to get in their face and yell at them to tell them that. Uh, but we definitely should figure out how to improve the situation. So anyways, I think that's interesting. You don't want to beat on them too much. Sometimes they do deserve it though.
So,
Just
okay,
saying, sometimes.
on occasion. But what I will say is I learned from a really awesome leader. His name's Doug Conant. He used to be the chairman of Avon. He was a prolific leader at Campbell Soup Company. He helped turn that company around. It was one of the worst places to work of all Fortune 500 consumer packaged goods companies when he took it over. It was abysmal. And he, got rid of a bunch of people that just didn't want to play ball because he had some pretty high standards. And he really turned around a lot of the leaders. And his philosophy was to be tough-minded on standards, but tender-hearted on people. And he used that as a way to be able to make really great decisions about letting people go, about who to promote, about how to support people. So it's totally fine to be good on the standards and the numbers are the numbers and the goals are their goals. Like I'm down with that 100%. And we're talking about humans. We're not talking about robots. This isn't AI. These are human beings with thoughts, feelings, ideas, hopes, dreams, families, all these aspirations for themselves. And so we got to kind of dance with both of those all at one time. So tough-minded on standards, tender-hearted on people is a philosophy that really worked really well for him. Turned that whole company around, made it super profitable during his tenure. So I've adopted that one as mine as well.
It sounds good. I like that because yeah, you got to have your standards, your expectations, right? It's like, hey, if you're not at a certain level, things got to get done, and you may have to make some hard decisions about the direction of where that individual is going. But I always try to like to give them a chance. Like let's try to turn the ship around. Let's try to figure out what we need to do. But at a certain point, especially if it's a repeat, I swear, if it's a repeat, it's like, hold up. We talked about this one and you did it again. Come on now. Like we got to turn the ship around. Otherwise, we're going to have to do
Well, it's
something
either
about
change
this.
the person or change the person.
What? Hold up, mic drop. Change the person or
Change the
change the
person.
person.
Yeah.
Yo, okay, I like that. That's pretty good. Okay, so you're a very experienced coach. We're talking about 20,000 people you've helped. I love that. That's pretty awesome. I bet you've witnessed some commonalities, some common pitfalls for executives and leaders. Can we talk about some of those commonalities that you think most people are having, and then what can we do to solve some of those commonalities?
How much time do we have?
Oh.
So one of the biggest things, a big miss that I see with a lot of leaders is they take their foot off the gas on their own personal development. So whether that's, reading, it's watching TED Talks, it's subscribing to journals, going to conferences. Shoot, TikTok is even educational based on the people who are on there. or working with a coach, being in a training program, getting additional certificates, just growing themselves and growing their own capabilities. What I see happens a lot is that leaders, they will get some knowledge early on, they'll grow in their career, and that's terrific. And then they'll get to a certain level and they'll start to stumble because they haven't refreshed their perspective on how they're leading, how they're managing their teams, how they're driving the business. So they're using the same techniques that got them into the C-suite, for example, and they haven't up-leveled that. Well, if you're continuing to up-level yourself, you need to up-level those skills too about how to really lead and manage your team. So that's number one. And number two is the education outside. So what else is happening in the world of work? So I do a lot of work on this because I work in every industry you can possibly think of. So I'm looking at trends, I'm looking at data, I'm looking at things across the board about what's happening in terms of, hiring, firing, layoffs, what's really motivating people, what do employees want, how to up level leadership structures. Because if you don't do that, you get behind the times really quickly, and the world moves so fast nowadays. Like all the companies who are struggling with AI, it's like, well, AI has been here around for a while. If you didn't notice it when you type into Gmail that it was finishing your sentences 3 years ago, you weren't paying attention and going, where did that come from? How does that work? So it's the curiosity and the knowing that I don't know what else is out there. When I see leaders not doing that level of study or not working with somebody to get informed, that's where we run into problems. And I think some of the things that happened over COVID with like pulling people out of conferences, with people, a lot of companies cut learning, development, training, coaching budgets, professional development across the board. So that made it difficult for people to continue some of that skill development. And I'm seeing it in real time with the leaders that I work with, people who call in to consult with me because they haven't kept up and now they're trying to play catch up, and it's almost too hard to do.
That's really good. So you think COVID played a big role in that because a lot of these companies cut some of that stuff, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's the leader's responsibility. I mean, the information is abundant. So I mean, shoot, look at YouTube or whatever. I mean, you get a podcast, you could do all kinds of different things to learn these things. Read a book, But you think that COVID kind of like shut some of that down where people weren't investing in
They got
themselves and
focused.
developing in
That's
themselves.
totally right. They got focused on like the non-human aspects of business. They got focused on whether people were working from home or not and how efficient they were. It's like, well, you weren't even measuring how efficient they were when they were in the office. And now you're concerned that what they're doing. You weren't paying attention to what they were doing when they were in their cubicle. Now they're in their home cubicle. You're focusing on the wrong thing. They weren't looking at how do I grow myself? How do I grow my team? How do I grow the business? They were looking at really just the dollars and cents. And then when you start to take away access to those resources, yeah, I think it's really easy to say, well, there's not a budget for this anymore. And I just don't believe that hoping, because hope's not a strategy. I don't think that hoping that the skills that you already have are going to make you successful well into the future is a good idea. So to me, and you look at some of the people, and you've interviewed so many people on this show, right? The really hard charging, super successful people. They are students of the game. Their game. How am I doing as a leader? How am I showing up every day? How am I taking care of myself? How am I prepared to support my team? That's one. How am I a student of the game of business, of the game of life, the game of what else is happening in the world? The people who are winning right now are the ones who are pushing themselves to do it. No one's doing it perfectly, but like I listened recently, you had Grant Cardone on here. That man is a student of the game. Student of the game. That's why he's so good at what he does. It's not just that he's riding on his own coattails from his previous success. It's the idea that he was on that show, that he would start from zero and not use, oh my Lord, and use all of his personal faculties, not his connections, not the who you know, not his connections. He just did it out of all the things that he's learned before, but he was still a student of the game then, of like, how do you do this with starting from zero? I need to learn how to do that, because that is the reality for almost every entrepreneur that's out there. They're not sitting on millions of dollars in the bank. They're looking at a negative bank account maybe, and they're thinking, how do I get in there? He's a student of the game. That's why I love people like that. I love that you interview people like that, those are the ones who are going to continue to win in the future. They go, AI, is it scary? Maybe. Is it going to affect my business? Absolutely. Should I learn more about it? Yeah, you absolutely should. This was an argument that I had with a client several years ago around blockchain. Like, I don't even need to know about blockchain. Maybe, but if you understood about blockchain and supply chain very differently when COVID hit, you would have a very different concept of ways to be able to, support your business differently because you were already thinking about it. So it's really being a student of the game, both in how you lead yourself and then how you're leading in the business.
Well, and one of the things that I do is I get to help executive level job seekers, right? Who get let go from corporate America, and then they're dealing with ageism and age discrimination and all that. But one of their biggest issues is the development side. It's like, you worked at this company for 20 years and you got a little complacent. You didn't continue the development side. And so your skills are behind, they're outdated. You're outdated. And I can tell in a lot of the technology use and things like that, they really struggle with that. Okay. And so understanding that, I get to help them and coach them and really make some recommendation and guidance on, like, hey, if we know what the objections are already, okay, why are they discriminating against you? It's not just your age. It's not just because you're over 50 or whatever. It's not that. That's not it. It's because they think you're slow to adapt. Okay, you're a resistor of technology. Okay, like there's other reasons. They think you're going to be expensive. A lot of da. I could go on the list, but it's like, let's go ahead and overcome some of these objections. We need to adapt. We need to brush up on those skills. We need to start learning how to use technology. Like, let's get with the program. And so if we can prove to the employer and showcase that, hey, you know what? I am up to date. Okay. Right. I'm not an outdated version. Okay. Like I'm up to date. Right. If you can show them that very clearly, then you got a much better chance at getting into that new role. But if you're just going into it, with the old school skill set and mindset, then it's going to be tougher. It's going to take longer.
Yeah, 100%. It's really, not just staying up on trends. It's having a point of view and a perspective. It's being able to show that you can critically think about what the situation is going to be. I'm really proud of the background that I have. And you're like, she's worked with over 20,000 leaders. All of it's true. And that's taught me a lot. And that only gets me so far. If I'm not staying on top of everything else that is out there, then I'm going to be just like every other coach that's there. I don't want to be like every other coach. I want to have a point of view and an opinion, and I do. So that's part, but that's part of my MO and that's part of the value creation that I've got with companies. And I'm sure that's what you're doing with these people too, is they need to be a student of their own game. Go in there and figure, just talk about how they can add value, how they can help advance the business. And part of that is not just, based on their 20, 30, 40 years of experience. It's really, what else can you do for the next however many years that you want to work, or what you want to add to that company. It's huge. It's a great service that you're offering people, because they got to get out of that old mindset too.
Yeah, it is. It's a mindset, right? Like, one of the reasons why I've been so successful in what I'm doing is because I teach just outside the box approaches, things that I'm like, you know what? If I was doing it, if I was searching, what would I do? Right. And I'm coming at it from an entrepreneurial lens and a business owner lens. And I know exactly what I would do. And I needed to get my message out there, and I need to get noticed and recognized, and I need people to know who I am. And if you're just applying online, look, nobody knows who you are. Okay. And you're not being seen by anyone. You're just going into a black hole. And so, I started creating a lot of different, outside the box approaches to get noticed, seen, heard, and discovered. And that's what I teach in my summit. But there's one idea that I've been teasing the job seekers, and I'm just waiting for somebody to pick it up. I actually did have one person pick it up, and he's done very, very successful with it, actually. Only one out of the years I've been telling people about this, which I'm like, if I was a job seeker right now, to showcase that I'm innovative, I'm creative, I'm outside the box, I'm not outdated, right? I would create my own
Oh,
podcast, and
yes. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And I would interview. I was like, you got to do informational interviews. It's kind of your lifeblood when you're searching for a job. You got to do informational interviews with people that work at the companies that you want to work for. So if I want to work at Toyota, I need to go interview, somebody that's in HR over there at Toyota. And so anyway, if I'm having to do that anyways, what a better way than to start a podcast and invite them on and say, that you want to highlight them and spotlight them and their experience and da 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 da. Right. And then you chop it up and you get to, post it out there as a micro content. It's promoting yourself and promoting the company. It's like this win-win scenario. And there's something about a podcast. Like after this interview, Catie, I already know it just is what it is. Like the relationship building is like expedited through podcasting. So all of a sudden you're building these really strong relationships with these people who are going to vouch for you. They're going to stand up for you and be like, oh yeah, you need to go look at Catie's resume. You know what I mean? Anyways, there's only been one person that took me up on this and they've done so well. We actually helped launch it. I was like, I need you guys to get with the program here. There's so many benefits.
I'm glad that you said,
but they're scared.
I'm glad you said that. A friend of mine launched a podcast in the middle of last year, and the residual impact that it has had on all of his businesses, on the nonprofits that he supports, and just his personal clout has been raised in ways that he didn't know. He's got people, it's based here in Texas, and people all over the world are listening to this podcast, and it's focused on the state of Texas. It's wild. But yeah, I don't know why more people aren't picking you up on that offer. It makes a ton of sense. And I think the most important part of it is, well, there's two pieces. One is this will live forever. The internet is forever. This will live forever. So the conversation that we have is memorialized. It can be used, time capsule, right? And we're talking about evergreen stuff. And you get the vibe. So for me, this is, our first like long conversation. I would totally recommend people coming on your show. I'd say he's a really cool guy. He's easy to talk to. Yeah, I'll be your hype woman for sure. But most importantly is like, he's going to make you feel really good about yourself and you're going to be energized by it. Who doesn't want that? Well, that's different than, I'll tell you, some of the other shows I've been on hasn't quite been that the vibes weren't there. But that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. It is what it is. But when you're trying to build your brand and everything, you want that to be your calling card. And it is. It's out there. Now everybody can see it. Everybody can see the way you make people feel in these conversations. The vibes are on. If I want that in my professional life, I'm hiring you. I'm going to hire you to bring those vibes out. Drop the mic, my friend. Like, I'm hiring you to help a friend of mine get a job or something like that, because I can say, it's all there. And everybody else who's listening, they're in the clubhouse, they're on YouTube, they can see this and they'll know I can recommend them, even if they've never met you, even if they've never had a conversation with you. They're like, no, Trevor Houston's where it's at. He's the real deal. And you should listen to him. You should follow his stuff, whatever. That's how this works. That's how this works.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you saying that. And you're absolutely right. One of the reasons why they even do an interview in the first place. Why? Because if you've gotten to the interview stage, you have to think and imagine that they already have your resume. They already got the piece of paper that says you can do the job. And they already know, based off the criteria, okay, you got the skills and you got everything we need. But why Catie? Why do I want to hire Catie? You know what I'm saying? Like, she's got it on paper, but why Catie? It's about who is Catie, right? It's who are you? What's the person behind the text, right? And so that's why, through a podcast, shoot, you could have yourself out there and it's going to show the employer who you are, who is Catie. And they'll be able to make that decision a lot faster. It actually will expedite the process because they're going to get an idea of who you are, what makes you tick. And if you're going to be a good fit for their organization, if they like you. The bottom line is they got to like
That's
you.
right. And listen, the clients that I pick up when I go and speak on big stages or through social media, doing podcasts like yours, are people who go, I like her. I like the vibe. I like the emotion. I like the way that, I'm pretty direct. So I'm not going to always make you feel good about yourself, but I am going to help you get better. So there are people who go, no, I don't want that. I don't want that at all. That's great. We shouldn't work together. Same with you, right? If someone's like, he's got too much energy, or he's he's too this or too that, okay, then that's not a good fit. But for the people who go, I want some more of that, I need some more of that, or I want to learn from that person, this is a great format and method to be able to do that. So I'm glad that you're doing it and encouraging people to. I think it's a really smart tactic. I hope some more of your current and future clients go, all right, I'll take the plunge.
Yeah, they will. It's just, again, it goes back to again, some of the resistor. They're worried, okay, about what's the employer going to think about me if I do this. Oh my gosh, like, because they don't see other people doing it. Now, if they saw everybody doing it, they would jump on the bandwagon, because most people are followers, right? But it takes a certain type of leader, a certain type of person that says, you know what, this makes sense. Let me get outside the box and do this. But everyone else is kind of worried about, oh no, what's that employer going to think about me? And anyway, so it's a mindset to get them outside of their own way. But okay, I want to shift gears a little bit from that, because you've coached so many people and all that kind of stuff. We talked about the commonality, okay, that of challenges that people have. And the next question I have for you is, what is one of the things that you've done that's been a biggest kind of mistake at coaching? You're like, dang, I would not do that again. Or what's something that you would change if you had to go back and do it over?
Oh, that's a great question. So before was certified as a coach, I think I probably thought that I was coaching. I was an athletic coach from the time I was about 14 years old. So I thought I knew how to motivate people. I thought I knew how to help them get better. But one of the things you learn in coaching, which is so different from the rest of my professional background, when you're teaching people, you're kind of hand holding and walking people through the steps. When you're consulting with people, you're giving them advice, but a lot of times you're also in there helping them to implement it. With coaching, you don't get to do any of that. And so you can often see your clients' issues and challenges. I help illuminate those, help them find more clarity around it, but it's up to them to make decisions about what to do going forward. And one of the things that they teach you very early on is you can't want it more than somebody else does. So I could see all the potential in the world. I could see all of your beauty and goodness and strength and all these kinds of things, but I can't will you into being different or showing up differently or trying on new things. And so very early on, I was doing, it was actually when I was going through Georgetown University and we had to take on pro bono clients. So I was super green. And this one client that I had was making decisions about his professional career based on a girlfriend who was sort of in his life and sort of out of his life. It's not the most professionally sound way to make decisions, but he was letting his heart kind of be his guide. And he asked me a question, and I'm again open, direct with all my clients. But he asked me a question about, well, um, what do you think I should do? Should I just like break up with her? Like, what do you think I should do? And that was not a question I should have answered because number one, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a counselor. Although sometimes coaching will feel like therapy, and people do cry on occasion because it is.
Did you tell him to dump her? What'd you tell him? What'd you tell him?
I
You're like, dump her, get rid of
so
her. She ain't good for you.
I wasn't quite as direct like that, but
Okay.
I did say that I didn't think that the relationship was healthy, and that it didn't seem like this was helping him get into a good decision making spot. He's like, "Do you think I should break up with her?" And then I said, "Yeah, I do," and I should not have said that because my opinion there, while it may influence his decision to move forward or whatnot, that's the opposite of what he wanted to hear. He was in such an emotional state, and this is why the feelings and emotional stuff is at the forefront of my practice now. He was in such an emotional state that all he wanted me to do was say, "It's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. Your career is going to be fine. She's going to come back. She's going to love you." He wanted a friend. He needed someone to love on him. And in that moment, the conversation went where it didn't need to go. So one of the skills that I really tried to work on early on was, um, I use this expression a lot. I'll sit in the foxhole with you. I will be shoulder to shoulder with you all day long. I am in your corner. I've got your back as a coach. I always tell my clients, I've got your back, but I can't take that kind of stuff on, and I can't give you advice about how to live your life. What I can help you to do is think through like all these different ways of thinking about the problem so that you feel empowered to make the choice and you feel like you can stand behind it and understand like the inner workings of your mind of what's going on like emotionally, what's going on in your body, like how does that influencing how you're deciding. But I'm never going to give you advice about what to do. It's not my place to do that, because the thing that I learned that was most important is all of my clients, this is some Wizard of Oz stuff, but like all of my clients have it in them to be their best advocate, to be their best support, to be their best guide. And my job is to help shepherd and nurture that sense so that they can make really great decisions when I'm not around. They can make really great decisions without Catie's advice. So that was the first and last time I ever did that in coaching. I felt terrible about it. He fired me as a
Did it?
coach. Like he
Oh,
fired me as a coach.
so he fired you.
Yeah.
So he broke up
Oh,
with
he
you
did.
instead of breaking up with her. Oh, snap. He broke up with somebody. He was like, I'm getting rid of
He
somebody
did. He
today.
did. And I deserved it. And I deserved it. It was a really important lesson to learn early on. And I will tell you, since then, I've been in other situations where people are in this place of desperation. They just want someone to tell them what to do. And if I can work with them to help them look at themselves as their best advisor, all the rest of the stuff that comes after that, they can feel good about their decisions. They can feel empowered to move forward. So yeah, that was a really difficult lesson learned early on.
Hey, I love it though. I mean, you gotta learn those lessons, right? I mean, if you're not failing, you're not growing. I mean, you gotta make some mistakes here and there. Now, I will say this. I kind of came up with this. There's three levels of everybody says you need to learn from your mistakes, but there's really three levels, three types of people anyway. There's the moron. Okay, the moron doesn't learn. He makes the same mistakes over and over and over and over and over again, right? Doesn't learn. Then you got the smart man. The smart man will learn from his mistakes. And then you got the wise man. The wise man will learn from other people's mistakes. Okay. So that's one of the reasons why I like to shine a light on some of your coaching mistakes so other people can learn from you. I don't want them to burn their hand on the stove to learn it, that it's hot, right? I want them to watch you put your hand on the stove and go, I don't know. I don't want to do that. Right. So that's a wise man. A wise man will learn from someone else's mistakes instead of through their own. But there is nothing like, I will tell you though, there is nothing like putting your hand on the stove to teach you the lesson. Right. Right. Watching somebody else, you're going to go, ooh, that hurts. But when you do it yourself, you're like, dang. Right. I'm never doing that again. So, I hope that makes sense to everybody listening. You have something I want to make sure we shine a light on. You've got a goal setting. Tell me about what we were talking about, either the
Yeah.
goal setting a checklist or something like
I
that.
create a goal setting guide every year.
Got
I
it. Okay.
usually launch it at December, January timeframe, because just traditionally that's when people like to set goals. I don't do New Year's resolutions. That's not the kind of girl that I am. But I do think that at any one day of the year is a good time to say, I don't want to do it this way anymore. I want to hit reset. I want something different from my life, my job, my relationships, whatever. And so what I find out there is there's a lot of information about how to set a SMART goal and how to have metrics and all that kind of stuff and build an accountability. But I see that as like the third step in actually setting goals that people are going to achieve. You first have to understand what's happened. Do a little bit of looking in the rear view to say, what was my last year like? How did I feel? What milestones did I hit? Where did I stumble? Who is in my life that's not serving me now? Who do I need to have in my life that could be serving me better? So I really want people to get into this space where they're looking at not professional goals or relationship goals, but there's spiritual, physical, emotional, community goals. There's all sorts of kinds of things that you could be setting your life direction around. So it's one, you got to go in the Wayback Machine. Number two, then you need to sit in a space where you're like, okay, if I could wave the magic wand and achieve all of the things that I want in this coming year, how am I going to feel? How am I going to know that it's working? How am I going to know that it's working? Because you got to wait to the end of the year maybe to hit the whole goal. But how do I know I'm on the right path? Who else do I need to have in my life that's going to support me? How do I really start to design it? And then you get into the space where you say, okay, so then what is the actual goal that I want to set? So before you know what the right financial target is, or the business target is, or whatever it is, relationship target it is, you still have to have a sense of like, how do I want to feel when this is happening? Because, and then maybe you've never thought about that. I don't know how I want to feel in my relationship. Okay, well, think about it. How do you want to feel in your relationship? Do you want to feel supported? Do you want to feel energized? Do you want to feel passionate? Do you want to feel just overwhelming love? What is it that you're going to need in this coming year? Then you can write a goal around that. So it's like making sure that you have a full sense of all of these components before you say, and I want to lose 20 pounds. Like, for the sake of what? What's the feeling behind that? So it's really to get people into that emotional and feeling state without it feeling too woo woo. So it's like a 20-page guide to kind of work through some questions, but really getting into a space where you're creating a goal because it's really like for the sake of this lived experience that you want to have.
Yeah, and I love that you said all that, because a lot of that, it helps you to really visualize it. I think, visualization is so important as well. It's like, why people do, the vision boards and all that kind of stuff, to really really plan it out and strategize your goals. However, I want to ask you about this in the coaching, in the balance, striking the balance between really sitting down and doing kind of like your exercise and really strategizing and talking about, why I want to do this, and all the goals and what's going to get me there, and what do all I need, and like really strategizing it, sitting down and taking some time. So there's that end of it. And then you hear a lot of people saying, hey, just go do before you're ready, just take action. Like I think there is a balance between like thinking about it too much, because what I've seen, here's the reason why I'm bringing this up. Specifically, there's somebody on my team that I'm coaching right now, and she called me, and she's talking about, hey, should I go to this? Should I do that? Should I do da? And she's overthinking, right? She's trying to put the strategy in, but she's just overthinking. And I said, hey, you know what? Right now, what I'm hearing from you specifically is you're thinking about it too much. You just need to do. You need to put one foot in front of the other and figure it out as you go. Right? We don't have to have all the answers all the time to take a step. Okay. And she was like, you're right. You're so right. Like she's in her own head thinking about it way too much, trying to make sure that everything is perfect and lines up and plan it all out and strategizing. So can you talk to me? Because I know both are important. What's that balance look like? And when do you know if it's like, you know what? Let me just take action.
What you're experiencing with her is she's staying in the thinking part of this, right? And trying to make a decision on very tactical things, as opposed to saying, let's just say that she wants to feel more empowered in her sales tactics. So if the feeling is empowerment, of all the things that she could do, what is the thing that's going to be most empowering? Like, that's what I would say is, if that's the feeling of all these things you're talking about, what's going to be the most empowering? Go do that. So you're looking at somebody who's trying to choose the smartest thing, as opposed to kind of honoring what it is that they want to feel like. The goal is around the feeling. The goal is around our experience. The goal is not around losing 20 pounds or increasing sales by 20%. It's just not. It's the feeling. Because at the end of the year, when I say, hey, Trevor, if you had a great year, you're gonna be like, man, it felt amazing. You're not going to say, I hit my sales goal and increased it by 5%. You'll get there, but you're going to tell me how you feel. You're going to tell me how your experience is. So if she's in her head about things, it's because we haven't clarified what it is that the feeling piece is. Like, what is it that she wants to feel? The feeling is what keeps you going. The feeling is what you're chasing. I was a competitive swimmer growing up. I swam all the way through college, and that's a lot of hours spending looking at a black line at the bottom of the pool. It was my entire life from 8th grade through senior year in college, that hours and hours, miles and miles looking at the bottom of a pool. I was not chasing a time. I was chasing a feeling. I was chasing the competitive edge. I was chasing the feeling that you get of accomplishment. That's what I wanted. I wanted to feel accomplished. I wanted to feel like a champion. I wanted to feel like a winner. I was chasing that. I was not chasing getting this specific time. If you talk to Michael Phelps, he's a great example of that. He was not chasing specific times. He was chasing a feeling of being an Olympian and being the best in the world. Being the best in the world, the time is irrelevant. It'll say whether you are or not, but he wasn't chasing the time. He was always chasing the feeling. So if you take even just that mentality of people who are the ultra champions of the world, you've got to have that feeling sense too. So when you've got people who are struggling about going or not, they're not clear about the feeling piece. If you spent some time with her and helping to her unlock that, you're going to be able to say, hey, this is where you need to go, or this is that is probably a good choice. For you, you might get to that feeling piece faster, which is easier for you to say, just go, because you're probably not going to make a wrong mistake because you got the feeling clarified.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think her feeling, what she was feeling was just fear. That's what she was. She was afraid that she was just going to waste her time, or it wasn't going to be whatever. Like what the issue was she was really planning way too much whether or not she should go check out the Chamber of Commerce. And I'm like, just go check it out. You won't know until you go. I mean, she was getting everybody's opinion about whether this was going to be this or that, and what her strategy was going to be, and all this kind of other stuff. And I said, the bottom line is you're just afraid that you're going to go and you're going to waste your time, and it's not going to be worth it, or whatever else. It's not going to work. That's what you're afraid of. So just go with, somebody told me this a long time ago, and I like it for certain scenarios, maybe not for everything, but for certain scenarios, no expectations, no disappointments. So like in that scenario, I said, go with no expectation, just go, and just, you might be surprised. And she went, she took my advice and she went, and she came back. She was like, oh, it was amazing. Actually, I did this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, see, you wouldn't have known that unless you just go.
The feeling, so you helped realign the feeling, which was anxiety, to exploration or curiosity. So if you know that, and if she knew, and it sounds like she did after she talked to you, that where she needed to come from was the feeling, that sense of curiosity, and that's what propelled her to go, then all these other kinds of things happen. This is why the emotional and feeling stuff, I think, is so important, because it really does influence our behavior or our indecision in this scenario.
Well, I love it. I love it. I love it. Catie, I could talk to you all dang day long, because this stuff's super important, and I know the audience is getting a lot from it. What is the best place for the audience to connect with you? I know I did put, by the way, I put your goal setting the checklist, or what? I'm sorry, I keep messing it up.
It's a guide.
Okay. Sorry, I keep messing up. I put your goal setting guide is in the chat, and also will be in the show description, so you guys can take a look down there, get her guide, go ahead and pick it up. But where should the audience connect with you? Any place specifically on social that you hang out, or what should they do there?
Yeah, my favorite social at the moment is TikTok, because I talk directly to people. I host lives on occasion, and I'm really talking about the things that I'm seeing in my business and supporting entrepreneurs, leaders, and really talking about the trends around work and employment of the day. So TikTok, it's the Catie Campbell. So we'll put those in the show notes too. And then if you go to the goal setting guide, it takes you to my website, and you can poke around there. And there's ways to get in touch with me, get on my calendar, so we can talk one-on-one.
Beautiful. Catie Campbell in the house. We appreciate you so stinking much, guys. That's the show. It's all about who you know. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Who You Know Show podcast. My name is Trevor Houston, and if you've enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing wherever you listen and leave us a positive review to help us keep the mics on in the studio. Until next week, that's the show. It's all about who you know.